What's going on, you guys? It's Cody Steck. Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another video. In this one, we're going to be talking about a very important topic that I've been getting asked a lot about here in the last couple of months. It seems like more and more people are worried about this stuff, and there's a lot of changes happening, and this is something that I think is really important to cover because it's going to affect everybody here along the Wasatch Front. I'm going to share some interesting articles and facts for you here from what I found, and then I'm also going to kind of throw in my opinion throughout the video. And I'd love to hear your opinion. If you've got, if you agree with me, or if you got a differing opinion, go ahead and drop it in the comment box below. Of course, I'm not going to be able to agree with everybody, and you're gonna may or may not agree with me, and that's totally okay. I just like to have an open discussion and just kind of say, hey, based on what I know from having grown up here and what I see, here's some potential options for what I think could help address these issues. So that being said, let's go ahead and jump into this and take a look at what's happening with the Great Salt Lake specifically and water issues here along the Wasatch Front. I want to start off with this article here that's titled Dust Lake City. There's a disaster looming as Utah professor fights to save the Great Salt Lake. So if we just come down here, I've highlighted some very important parts of this article. Researchers are conducting a study on the ground level that aims to save the lake through education 1 mile at a time. Now, this is actually kind of interesting to me. I don't know what this means. I know they're trying to educate people on what's happening, but I do think that education is not the only thing that should be happening, because purely just having education is not going to change anything, right? You could have all the knowledge or power in the world, but if you don't actually act on that, it's not going to do anything, right? So I just had to, throw that out there right from the start. There's water flowing from the Jordan River, which used to spill into this lake bed, meaning the Great Salt Lake, but now the narrow channel pools somewhere on the far side of Antelope Island. The lapping waves of this former marshland now only come from the heat radiating off its stark surface. And that's where the real problem is revealed. What looks like a packed, hard, salty playa can actually be pretty fragile. When the wind comes along, it starts to pulverize this. The dust is dangerous when the concentrations are high in the air that we breathe, regardless of what it's made out of. So basically, they're saying that the Great Salt Lake, the level has dropped so much that now there's a lot of lake bed that is now exposed and it's drying out. And then it gets, the wind comes up and it kind of picks up all of that dust and dirt and just whips it up into the air. And then, for us here along the Wasatch Front, we end up breathing that in. And of course, it's not, the safest or best thing to be breathing in, right? So this is kind of where they're coming back to the fact and saying, we need to figure out something that's happening, a solution to this problem to either get the Great Salt Lake to fill back up to cover those lake beds and provide that protection, or we need to figure out some other type of alternative. The first one is obviously the easiest, but not necessarily so easy, but that's kind of the quick answer to this problem. So if we come down here a little bit further, that kind of covers everything actually that I wanted to mention on this article, but I want to come over here and get some information about how Utahns want to respond to the drought and the record low levels of the Great Salt Lake. So nobody wants to be breathing in bad air. Of course, that's something that Utah has been trying to address for quite a while now, and they're making progress on it, but this is going to cause another level of of problems for the Wasatch Front. So let me come down here and just kind of cover some of these highlights again. In plain terms, drought is a downer. I've got this right here. Let me highlight this for us real quick. So in plain terms, drought is a downer. It is interfering with water supplies, recreational opportunities, and farmers' livelihoods. And it is asking us to consider hard questions about population growth, water scarcity, and how generations will fare going forward. Now, there was actually a new study that just came out, and it says a new Deseret News Hinckley Institute of Politics poll shows that Utah residents are willing to step up in this urgent crisis, with 50% who say providing water-wise incentives is the best move in this increasingly arid climate. So they're basically saying half the people out there want there to be some type of incentive to convert your grass area, maybe in your front yard or on the park strip, to something that's more water wise, which would be more like desert friendly. I agree with this. I think this is a smart move, but I don't think there should be incentives for this, especially when there's home builders out there who are still putting in grass on these brand new homes and putting in sprinklers. This is kind of just adding to the problem. Of course, if you already have grass at your home, if you're in an established, mature neighborhood, it's going to be pretty expensive to tear out all that grass and then go put in new shrubs and cactus and all that stuff. Cacti, I think that's the word. Yeah, so it's gonna be pretty expensive to do that if it's already there. But on these new build homes, they're putting in tons of grass on these homes when they really, in fact, should be mandating that, hey, you can have some grass, but you need to make at least 50% or 75% of it, kind of water wise, as they like to say. So that being said, I don't think it makes sense to offer incentives to people in these mature neighborhoods to switch theirs over if they're not going to require new home builders to actually, go this route right from the beginning when they're already paying for the landscaping. If we come down here, it also says that another 20% say more restrictions or penalties are in order for those who violate watering rules for purely cosmetic reasons. So basically, if you're just overwatering your grass or whatever, 20% of people say they should have, penalties for that. And 14% say that higher rates should be imposed for those who exceed their monthly water budget. Interestingly, 5% of those surveyed in the poll that tapped 801 residents July 13th through 18th said Utah does not need to save water, and another 11% simply do not know. Now, I think this is pretty interesting because I would, kind of be in that boat where we're going to cover some really important information here in just a second on this next article. But this is something that I think that people need to consider kind of the full picture of what this actually entails. So we're going to cover that here in just a sec, so make sure to stay tuned. On July 3rd, the level of the Great Salt Lake dropped below the October 2021 historic low elevation. So in October 2021, they had a previous record low, and then it filled back up through the winter, at least a little bit. And then on July 3rd, we hit that. So it was earlier in the year, and it has continued to decrease since that time. So that's something to kind of note here. In addition, the division noted that 18 of Utah's largest 45 reservoirs are below 55% of available capacity. Overall, statewide storage is 50% of capacity, and 83% of the state is experiencing extreme or exceptional drought conditions. Water districts throughout the state are offering rebates for conservation savings, encouraging residents to pull out turf in favor of less consumptive use. This goes back to that first thing I just mentioned. I think that, there's probably a time and a place for that type of activity, but if you're going to provide incentives to people who already have stuff, I still think that the city or the state should probably mandate these new builders to not be able to put in so much grass to really help maintain that. And that's the reason why I want to jump to this next article, is because there's actually statistics out there that say over 75% of the water that we use is actually used outdoors, right? And only 25% of it is used indoors for showers, baths, washing dishes, laundry, stuff like that, right? So most of the water that gets used is used outdoors. So this is, to me, this is just a very easy fix. I mean, we live in a desert. Like, come on, I love having grass. I love being able to, play with my kids on it. But at the same time, like, we don't need as much grass as people have, especially when, there are these concerns out there. However, there is a bigger concern that I think people are not addressing. And this is something that's really important and really good food for thought here, because this is going to change probably what your perspective is on this topic. Hey, real quick, guys, I want to tell you about the new newsletter that I'm going to be releasing here in the next little bit. If you want to sign up for it, go and click the link in the description box below. You'll just need your name and your email, and you'll be signed up for that newsletter. Now, this is going to be a newsletter that goes out every, probably 2 to 3 weeks or so, and it's going to have some information about what's happening in Utah, what's happening with the real estate market, what's happening with interest rates, and just kind of some information about the market overall. So if you want to sign up for that newsletter and be a part of that, make sure to click that link down below, and let's get back to the video. All right, so this next article actually comes from Utah Rivers Council. Now, I just found this article and this information from a quick Google search. I'm not super familiar with what these guys do, but I mean, it looks like a pretty, I do see that down here at the bottom that they are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. And, based on the name, it sounds like they're out there trying to protect rivers, and they're very interested in water and what's going on with water. They've got all these different articles about who we are, the Colorado River, the Bear River, water conservation. I mean, this looks like, you can tell just from what this says is that, this is designed to, this is focused on saving water and with an interest in the Utah Rivers Council, right? Because I'm always looking out for like those conspiracies. So this says the claim that Utah is running out of water is a myth. Here's why. Despite what Utah Water Project salesmen claim, the sky is not falling. Scores of news stories rush to the conclusion that Utah is running out of water. That's true. We see, these drought and water issue articles probably at least once a week, it seems like, maybe even more, with recent times because it's been so hot and so dry. It's easy to fall for this media hype, especially when you hear that Utah's population will double in the coming decades. That argument is misleading because Utah's total municipal water use is less than 10% of all water used in the state. Again, I just want to mention that, hey, these guys look pretty legit. They have a lot more information than I do, so I think this is pretty valid information. I'm sure they're pulling this from some type of study or survey that they've done, and so I think think this is pretty valid information to at least consider here in this scenario. Farming and ranching accounts for about 85% of Utah's water use, while indoor use by residents, a water need, consumes a mere 3 to 4%. In other words, even if our population doubled, our indoor water needs would still only amount to 6 to 7% of Utah's total water use, which is hardly a water crisis. And this is really interesting because if you look at this information, 85% goes to farming and ranching. And well, although I do support those industries and do believe that, hey, they're absolutely a necessity for us to be able to continue to live the way that we do here in America, I do kind of have to agree that, like farming in the desert and using all this water is probably not the best use of water, right? Going and farming in an area that has more water is going to be a better use of resources. And, as sad as it is, I kind of feel like, it's probably time for a lot of these farmers, to kind of sell off and maybe not use so much water. I don't know. I know that's going to cause a lot of controversy. I know they were there first. I know they've been doing it for generations, and I have to support that. But at the same time, I don't think that we should necessarily look down on that because they are using so much water. When it comes to people talking about water conservation, you can't ignore this fact that, most of the water is going to farming and ranching, not necessarily to water use that's there at residential properties. It says right here, the majority of water in Utah cities is used to water and overwater grass. Outdoor lawn watering in our cities by businesses, residents, and government institutions accounts for 6 to 8% of Utah's total water use. Much of this amount is considered waste because people water sidewalks, driveways, and the streets. Water during rainstorms, turn their water on too early in the spring, or water in the heat of the day when much of the water just ends up evaporating. This watering includes the flood irrigation of grass by canal systems, which are often unmetered, meaning that some residents may dump several feet of water at a time on their grass. So it says that basically by simply being smarter about how we water our lawns, it is widely estimated we could reduce outdoor water use by at least 25% without removing any grass or diverting more water from our precious rivers and lakes. So I think that kind of probably states what these guys are interested in. They want to keep the water in the rivers, in the lakes. So it's all about using water more efficiently. You can see with this graph here, annual water use, 85% goes to agriculture. And for municipal water, right, what's getting used in the cities, 75% of it is outdoor. So this comes, this is where the argument comes into play of hey, stop watering your grass, use water-wise plants and bushes and stuff, which I completely agree with. I think that's something that more people should do. But you also have to look at the bigger picture that even though there's a lot of water going to those things, it's still relatively small in the grand scheme of things of where the water's going, overall. Far from running out, Utah's municipal water supply is actually growing. Not only is Utah not running out of municipal water, the state's municipal water supply is increasing. As Utah continues to pave its irrigated farmland up to 30 acres per day, according to the American Farmland Trust, the water no longer being used to water those crops can be transferred to new uses. So they're basically saying up to 30 acres a day is being paved, is being turned into other developments and not being used for farming, or ranching or anything like that. And so now that water can be used for other things. So I thought this was really interesting information. If you want to check out more about this, it's just called utahrivers.org. I think there's a ton of really good information here on this website. This is something I just kind of wanted to bring to light, like I said, to shed my opinion along the way, and also kind of just give you guys something to think about, because this is something I get asked about all the time when it comes to water here in Utah, because this is a big concern. And I think there's two sides of the story here, and sometimes this other side of the story doesn't always get told. Now, if you've got information out there that, supports or even contradicts what I said here, I'd love to see it. Drop it in the comment section down below. And also, as always, reach out to me. If you're thinking about buying, selling, or investing in real estate here in Utah, I'd love to be your trusted Utah real estate resource. I love hearing from you guys. I've had hundreds of people reach out over the last couple of years directly from videos like this, and I love hearing from you guys about what your individual situation is. A lot of you are moving in from out of state, and a lot of you are moving, from one city to the other here within the state as well. So my information's here on the screen, and there's a link down in the description box below where you can schedule a call with me directly. I'd love to chat with you about your goals and see how I can help with that. Thanks so much for watching, guys. We'll catch you in the next one.